The Galactic Assembly's Mockery. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Assembly shimmered with opulence, its crystal walls reflecting the light of distant stars. Delegates from 100 alien civilizations gathered, their voices a cacophony of languages and tones. Each representative wore their finest ceremonial garb, their presence a symbol of their planet's pride and power. In the center of the room, a holographic display showed the focus of today's discussion. A small, almost laughable fleet of ships. The Vorin Alliance representative, a tall being with scales that shimmered gold under the light, stood at the podium. Esteemed members of the assembly, he began, his voice dripping with mockery. This is the so-called tiny army that dares to challenge the might of the Vorin Alliance. The hologram zoomed in on the fleet, revealing a ragtag collection of outdated ships, their hulls patched and mismatched. Laughter rippled through the hall. How can such a pitiful force be considered a threat? A delegate from the Tainori Confederation scoffed, their three eyes blinking in unison. It's an insult to our intelligence to even discuss this. Others nodded in agreement, their amusement barely contained. For centuries, the Vorin Alliance had been the galaxy's dominant military power, crushing any opposition with ease. The idea that this tiny fleet, led by a relatively obscure species, could pose any challenge seemed absurd. But not everyone was laughing. At the edge of the room, General Nyril of the Ulzan Republic sat silently, his sharp, insect-like features fixed on the hologram. Unlike the others, he had faced humans before. Though his encounters were brief, he knew enough to understand that humans were not to be underestimated. They were resourceful, unpredictable, and capable of turning the smallest advantages into monumental victories. Perhaps you should reconsider your arrogance, Nyril said, his voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. This fleet may be small, but it is led by humans. Have you forgotten what they achieved during the era of expansion? The assembly stirred uncomfortably. The era of expansion was a time many wanted to forget. It was a period when humanity, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, carved a place for themselves in the galactic order through sheer determination and ingenuity. Their tactics were unconventional, their strategies unpredictable. They didn't play by the galaxy's rules, and that made them dangerous. The Vorin representative scoffed, waving a claw dismissively. Humans are primitive. Their technology is outdated, their ships barely spaceworthy. This tiny army will be crushed like all the others. Nyril leaned forward, his compound eyes narrowing. Primitive, outdated, perhaps, but do not mistake that for weakness. Humans have a way of turning their disadvantages into strengths. They are survivors, strategists, and fighters. If you think they will fall easily, you are a fool. The tension in the room grew as the delegates whispered among themselves. The hologram shifted, displaying the leader of the human fleet, Captain Ilara. Her sharp eyes and confident posture exuded an air of calm authority. Her name was unfamiliar to most, but Nyril recognized the look in her eyes, a look that spoke of unshakable resolve. Who is this Captain Ilara? A delegate from the Zenith Collective asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. What do we know about her? Not much, Nyril admitted, but that's precisely what makes her dangerous. Humans excel at being underestimated. They thrive on it. The Vorin representative laughed, his golden scales glinting as he gestured to the hologram. You give them too much credit, General. This is nothing more than a desperate attempt by a dying species. The Vorin Alliance will crush them and end this farce once and for all. Nyril said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. He knew that the galaxy's greatest mistakes were born of arrogance, and the Vorin Alliance, blinded by their own power, was walking straight into a trap. As the assembly session continued, the delegates debated the best course of action. Most dismissed the human fleet as a minor inconvenience, unworthy of significant resources. A few, like Nyril, urged caution, but their warnings were drowned out by the overwhelming confidence of the majority. The meeting ended with a unanimous decision. The Vorin Alliance would send a small fleet to eliminate the humans and end the so-called Tiny Army. It was seen as a formality, a show of strength to remind the galaxy of the Vorin's dominance. But as the delegates dispersed, Nyril lingered in the hall, staring at the hologram of Captain Ilara. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a grave mistake. The humans were more than they seemed, he was certain of it. And if the Vorin Alliance underestimated them, the consequences would be catastrophic. As he left the assembly, Nyril muttered to himself, "They may laugh now, but soon they'll learn the truth. Humans are never as small as they appear." The battle begins. Deep in the void of space, the Vorin Alliance fleet advanced with the arrogance of a predator stalking easy prey. Sleek and massive, their ships gleamed with polished metal, bristling with weapons. Their commanders lounged in comfort, confident in their superiority. To them, this was not a battle. It was a spectacle, a chance to display their might. Captain Ilara watched them from the bridge of her flagship, resolute. The contrast between her fleet and the Vorin's was stark. Her ships were old, patched together from whatever humanity could salvage. Their hulls bore the scars of battles long past, and their engines hummed with an uneven rhythm. Yet Ilara stood tall, her piercing gaze scanning the tactical display. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency, a mix of humans and alien allies who shared a common bond: survival against the odds. They knew the stakes. There was no retreat, no reinforcement. It was them against the galaxy's most feared armada. But none of them wavered. They trusted Ilara, and Ilara trusted her instincts. "Captain, the Vorin fleet is within range," her tactical officer reported, his voice calm despite the tension in the air. "They're broadcasting a message." Ilara nodded. "Let's hear it." The voice of the Vorin commander filled the bridge, smug and dripping with condescension. "This is Admiral Kyrex of the Vorin Alliance. Surrender now, and we may show you mercy. Resist, and you will be annihilated." The crew exchanged glances, but Ilara remained unfazed. She leaned forward, her voice steady and commanding. "Admiral Kyrex, this is Captain Ilara of the Resolute. If you believe mercy is on the table, then you've already lost." The Vorin commander's laughter crackled over the comms before the transmission cut off. A moment later, the Vorin fleet opened fire, their weapons lighting up the darkness like 1,000 tiny suns. The battle had begun. Ilara's fleet didn't respond immediately. Instead, her ships scattered like leaves in the wind, breaking formation and weaving through the barrage with uncanny precision. The Vorin ships struggled to track them, their targeting systems overwhelmed by the unpredictable movements. "Deploy the drones," Ilara ordered. From her ships, thousands of small, agile drones burst forth, their sleek forms darting toward the Vorin fleet. They moved like a swarm of angry hornets, weaving through enemy fire and targeting weak points with surgical precision. The Vorin ships faltered as their shields flickered under the relentless assault. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kyrex scowled. "What are they doing? Their movements make no sense." "Admiral, their drones are targeting our shield generators and propulsion systems," his second-in-command reported, panic creeping into his voice. "We're losing power on several ships." Kyrex slammed his clawed hand on the console. "They're just drones. Crush them." But the drones were not ordinary. Each one was equipped with adaptive AI, capable of learning and countering enemy strategies in real time. As the Vorin ships adjusted their tactics, the drones adapted faster, exploiting every weakness. Meanwhile, Ilara's fleet moved with precision, slipping through gaps in the Vorin formation and striking from unexpected angles. Her crew worked seamlessly, their movements almost instinctual. It was as if they were part of a single, unified organism. "Captain, we've disabled 2 of their cruisers," her tactical officer reported. "Their flagship is moving to intercept." Ilara smiled, her confidence unwavering. "Good. Let them come. Prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2 was the culmination of Ilara's unorthodox strategy. While the Vorin fleet focused on the swarm of drones and the scattered human ships, they failed to notice a series of small, stealthy craft slipping past their defenses. These ships carried a payload unlike any other, a weapon not of destruction, but disruption. The stealth craft reached the Vorin fleet's central command relay, a massive station coordinating the Armada's movements. In perfect synchronization, they unleashed their payload, electromagnetic pulses that fried the relay's systems in an instant. On the Vorin flagship, chaos erupted as their command network went dark. Kyrex shouted orders, but his crew scrambled in confusion, their communications jammed and their systems unresponsive. The once coordinated fleet was now a scattered mess, each ship acting on its own. Back on the Resolute, Ilara observed the unfolding chaos with satisfaction. Now, we strike. Her fleet surged forward, their ships moving with renewed purpose. They targeted the crippled Vorin ships one by one, their precise attacks crippling the once mighty Armada. The Vorin commanders, so accustomed to overwhelming strength, were utterly unprepared for the relentless onslaught. As the battle raged on, the tide turned decisively in favor of the humans. The Vorin ships began to retreat, their confidence shattered. What had started as a display of power had become a desperate fight for survival. On the bridge of the Resolute, Ilara stood tall, her gaze fixed on the retreating enemy. Her crew erupted in cheers, but she remained calm. This was just the beginning. "Let them run," she said, her voice steady. "They'll carry the story of what happened here. And when they return with reinforcements, we'll be ready." The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The galaxy had laughed at the tiny army, but now they would begin to understand the truth. When humans fight, they fight to win. The unseen strategy. The Vorin alliance reeled from the embarrassment of their defeat. What was supposed to be a quick and decisive show of force had turned into a humiliating retreat. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. How could such a tiny force of humans and their ragged fleet triumph against one of the most advanced militaries in existence? In the aftermath, the Vorin Council convened in a secluded chamber, their pride bruised and their tempers flaring. Admiral Kyrex stood before them, his golden scales dulled by shame. "They exploited our overconfidence," he growled. "Their tactics are unconventional, their strategies unpredictable. They use technology in ways we cannot anticipate." A council elder, her voice cold and sharp, interrupted him. "And yet you still underestimated them. You will not fail again." Kyrex clenched his jaw, bowing his head. "No, I will not." Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Captain Ilara and her crew celebrated their victory with quiet pride. But Ilara knew this was only a temporary reprieve. She stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars, her mind racing with plans. They had won the first battle, but the Vorin alliance would return, and they would not make the same mistakes twice. Captain, her tactical officer, Lieutenant Merrick, approached. "We've intercepted communications from the Vorin fleet. They're mobilizing reinforcements, 3 times the size of their previous force." Ilara nodded, her expression unreadable. "Good. Let them come. It's time to show them that size isn't everything." Her confidence wasn't blind. She had a plan, a strategy so unconventional that it bordered on madness. Humanity's history was filled with examples of turning the tide with ingenuity and adaptability, and Ilara intended to draw from that well of inspiration. In a secluded corner of the Resolute's hangar, a team of engineers and scientists worked tirelessly on what Ilara called Phase 3. At the heart of the project was a device salvaged from ancient human archives, a gravimetric distortion field. It was old technology, discarded by the larger galactic powers as obsolete, but humans had repurposed it in ways the galaxy could never imagine. Lieutenant Merrick observed the team, his curiosity piqued. "I don't understand, Captain," he said, watching as the engineers calibrated the device. How is this going to help us against an armada that outnumbers us 100 to 1? Ilara's lips curved into a small smile. The Vorin expect us to fight their way, head-on, with brute force, but we'll make them fight our way. This device will distort their sensor readings, create phantom signatures, and scramble their targeting systems. To them, it'll look like our tiny fleet has multiplied into hundreds. Merrick's eyes widened as the brilliance of the plan sank in. We'll make them think they're surrounded. Exactly, Ilara said. And in their confusion, we'll pick them apart, one by one. The Vorin reinforcements arrived at the battlefield with grim determination, their warships gleaming and bristling with weaponry. They spread out in a tight formation, their commanders determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. From the bridge of the Resolute, Ilara watched as the enemy fleet approached. Her crew was silent, their focus absolute. The tension was palpable, but Ilara's voice cut through it like a blade. Activate the field. A low hum vibrated through the ship as the gravimetric distortion field came online. Within moments, the battlefield transformed. To the Vorin fleet's sensors, dozens of human ships suddenly appeared, surrounding them on all sides. Every movement they made was mirrored by phantom fleets, creating an illusion of overwhelming force. On the Vorin flagship, Admiral Kirex stared at the tactical display, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. "How could they have assembled such a fleet so quickly?" "Admiral, our targeting systems are malfunctioning," a panicked officer reported. "We're locking onto nothing." Kirex snarled, his frustration mounting. "Hold formation. Do not fire until we have a clear target." But the humans didn't wait. Using the confusion to their advantage, Ilara's fleet struck with precision, targeting the Vorin's weaker vessels and retreating before the enemy could retaliate. Each attack was surgical, calculated to sow chaos and fear. The Vorin fleet, unable to distinguish real ships from phantoms, began firing wildly, wasting precious resources and exposing their flanks. Ilara's forces exploited every mistake, their small size allowing them to maneuver effortlessly through the chaos. As the battle raged on, Ilara's crew marveled at the effectiveness of the strategy. "They're chasing shadows," Merrick said, watching the tactical display with a mix of awe and amusement. "It's like they're fighting themselves." Ilara allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction, but her focus remained sharp. "Keep up the pressure. The moment they regroup, we lose our advantage." But the Vorin weren't entirely helpless. On their flagship, Kirex's engineers worked feverishly to adapt their systems, gradually filtering out the phantom signals. As the real human fleet became clearer, Kirex's confidence returned. "Enough of this," he growled. "Focus all fire on their flagship." The shift in tactics didn't go unnoticed aboard the Resolute. "Captain, they'd locked onto us," Merrick warned. Ilara's smile didn't waver. "Let them. They're about to learn why underestimating humans is always a mistake." As the Vorin fleet converged on the Resolute, Ilara prepared to unveil the final stage of her strategy. A move so bold that even her crew had doubted its success. The galaxy's greatest power was about to face humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt and outthink even the most formidable opponents. The turning point. The Vorin fleet loomed closer, its immense size a stark reminder of humanity's disadvantage. From the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Ilara stood unmoved, her steely gaze fixed on the tactical display. The enemy's formation tightened as they prepared to unleash a concentrated strike, their flagship leading the charge. "Captain, their targeting systems are fully operational," Lieutenant Merrick warned. "They've adapted to the distortion field." Ilara nodded, her expression calm. "Good. They're playing into our hands. Signal the fleet. Initiate the gauntlet maneuver." The crew exchanged tense glances, but carried out her orders with unwavering precision. Across the battlefield, the human fleet shifted, breaking into two separate groups and forming a corridor between them. To the untrained eye, it appeared to be a desperate retreat. But Ilara's crew knew better. The Vorin fleet surged forward, their confidence renewed. On the bridge of their flagship, Admiral Kirex grinned triumphantly. "They're running," he sneered. "Chase them down and finish this." As the Vorin ships entered the corridor, Ilara's voice rang out on the Resolute's comms. Now, hidden within the debris fields surrounding the battlefield, dormant human drones powered up, their adaptive AI guiding them with pinpoint accuracy. They unleashed a storm of precision strikes, targeting critical systems on the advancing Vorin ships. Engines sputtered, shields failed, and panic spread through the enemy ranks. "They've set a trap," one of Kyrex's officers shouted. "We're taking heavy losses." Kyrex slammed his fist onto the console. "Break formation and regroup." But it was too late. The gauntlet maneuver had funneled the Vorin fleet into a narrow kill zone, where Ilara's fleet could attack from both flanks. Her ships darted in and out, exploiting the chaos to deliver devastating blows. While the battle raged, Ilara's mind raced with calculations. Every move she made was a gamble, but she trusted her instincts and her crew. Her strategy wasn't just about outgunning the Vorin. It was about outthinking them. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or numbers. It was their creativity. "Captain," Merrick said, his voice tense, "the Vorin flagship is charging its main cannon. They're targeting us directly." Ilara's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Let them. Ready the countermeasure." On the Vorin flagship, Admiral Kirex seethed with rage. His fleet, one of the most formidable in the galaxy, was being dismantled by what should have been an insignificant opponent. But Kirex wasn't about to admit defeat. "Fire the cannon," he ordered, his voice cold and sharp. The massive weapon charge, its energy building into a blinding sphere of light. Across the battlefield, the sight struck fear into the hearts of many. The Vorin flagship's main cannon had destroyed entire planets. There was no escaping its destructive power. As the weapon fired, a beam of raw energy tore through the void, heading straight for the Resolute. Ilara's crew braced for impact, but their captain remained calm. "Deploy the field now," she commanded. At her signal, the Resolute activated its most daring piece of technology, a reflective energy field. The cannon's beam struck the field, and to the Vorin's horror, bent back toward the origin. The energy slammed into the Vorin flagship, disabling its main systems in an instant. On the bridge of the Resolute, cheers erupted as the enemy's flagship faltered. But Ilara raised a hand, silencing her crew. "We're not done yet. This is just the beginning." Across the battlefield, the Vorin ships began to falter. With their flagship crippled, their command network crumbled, leaving each ship to fend for itself. Some tried to retreat, while others fought desperately to hold their ground. But the humans pressed their advantage, their strikes precise and unrelenting. In the midst of the chaos, Ilara issued a bold command: "Open a channel to the Vorin fleet." Her face appeared on the screens of every Vorin ship, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around her. "This is Captain Ilara of the Resolute. You've seen what we're capable of. Surrender now, and we will allow you to retreat. Refuse, and we will finish what we've started." On the Vorin flagship, Kyrex seethed with fury, but his officers looked to him with desperation in their eyes. They knew the battle was lost. Reluctantly, the admiral growled, "Cease fire. Send the signal to retreat." As the Vorin ships pulled back, Ilara watched them go, her expression unreadable. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The humans had proven their resilience and ingenuity, but the Vorin alliance wouldn't give up so easily. They would return, stronger and more determined than ever. Later, in the quiet of the Resolute's war room, Ilara stood with her core team, planning their next move. "We've won the battle," she said, her voice steady. "But this was just a test. The Vorin will come back with everything they have. We need to be ready." Lieutenant Merrick frowned. "Do you think they'll fall for another trap?" "They won't," Ilara admitted. "But we won't need traps. By the time they return, will have built something they can't even begin to comprehend. The crew exchanged determined glances, the weight of their task sinking in. They had bought themselves time, but the real fight was yet to come. The galaxy had underestimated humanity once. Ilara would make sure they never did again. The hidden technology. The aftermath of the battle echoed across the galaxy, leaving both allies and enemies stunned. The Vorin fleet's retreat was unthinkable to many, an outcome that disrupted centuries of perceived galactic hierarchy. The humans, once regarded as insignificant newcomers, had proven their ingenuity and tactical brilliance. But Captain Ilara knew that the Vorin alliance would not rest until they uncovered the secrets behind humanity's unexpected strength. Far from the front lines, within the cold depths of space, the Resolute and her fleet regrouped in a hidden asteroid belt. Here, surrounded by the remnants of ancient celestial collisions, the crew worked tirelessly to repair their battered ships and prepare for the inevitable retaliation. Despite their victory, the atmosphere was tense. Ilara stood in the engineering bay, observing a team of human and alien scientists working on a crucial piece of technology, the gravimetric core. This device, a marvel of human ingenuity, had been the keystone of their success. It was more than just a weapon or a tool. It was a game changer. Dr. Callan, a wiry scientist with a sharp mind and a passion for pushing boundaries, approached Ilara with a tablet in hand. "Captain, the core's efficiency has exceeded expectations, but there's something you need to see." Ilara followed him to a terminal displaying data streams and energy readings. The numbers were staggering. "What is this?" she asked, her tone steady but curious. Callan hesitated before answering. "The gravimetric core isn't just distorting space, it's interacting with something deeper. It's as if it's communicating with the fabric of the universe itself." Ilara raised an eyebrow. "Communicating? You mean it's alive?" "Not exactly," Callan clarified. "But it's behaving unpredictably. It's evolving, adapting to its surroundings. If the Vorin get their hands on this technology, they could reverse engineer it, and we might not be able to stop them next time." Meanwhile, the Vorin alliance was already attempting to do just that. In the aftermath of their defeat, Admiral Kirex had ordered an elite team of spies to infiltrate the human fleet. These operatives, trained to blend into any environment, were dispatched with one mission: uncover the source of humanity's technological edge. One of the spies, a cunning Xenorian named Alice, successfully infiltrated a neutral trading post frequented by human supply ships. Disguised as a merchant, she gained access to snippets of human conversations and cargo manifests. She pieced together fragments of information about the gravimetric core, its unusual capabilities, and its mysterious origins. When Alice reported back to Kirex, the Admiral's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "If this gravimetric core is as powerful as they claim, we will take it from them and turn their own weapon against them." But Alice, unshaken by Kirex's arrogance, warned him. "Admiral, the humans are not like our previous enemies. They are unpredictable. If we underestimate them again, we may not recover." Kirex dismissed her concerns, his pride blinding him to the growing threat. "Humans are clever, yes, but they lack discipline. Their luck will run out." Back on the Resolute, Ilara prepared for the next phase of her plan. She knew the Vorin were likely plotting their counterattack, and it was only a matter of time before their spies uncovered the existence of the gravimetric core. To stay ahead, she needed to think several steps beyond them. "Captain," Lieutenant Merrick said, joining her on the observation deck, "the repairs are nearly complete, but morale is shaky. The crew knows the Vorin won't stop until we're destroyed." Ilara nodded, her expression unreadable. "That's why we're taking the fight to them. We won't wait for the Vorin to attack. We'll hit their supply chains, disrupt their communications, and force them to divide their forces." Merrick looked surprised. "You want to go on the offensive?" "Exactly," Ilara said, her tone firm. "The best defense is to make sure they're too busy defending themselves to focus on us. Ilara's plan was audacious. While the Resolute and her fleet prepared to strike at the heart of the Voron's supply network, she deployed stealth teams to gather intelligence on enemy movements. Her strategy wasn't just about physical confrontation. It was psychological warfare. Every move she made was designed to instill fear and uncertainty in the Voron ranks. But the gravimetric core wasn't her only secret weapon. Hidden within the fleet was a new prototype, a small, seemingly insignificant drone that carried an advanced AI system capable of hacking into enemy systems undetected. These drones, dubbed Spectres, were the culmination of human innovation, blending old technology with new ideas. As the fleet approached their first target, a heavily guarded Voron supply hub, Ilara stood before her crew, her voice steady and resolute. "This isn't just a battle for survival. This is a battle to prove that we deserve a place in this galaxy. They think we're small, weak, insignificant. Let's show them what it means to be human." Her words ignited a spark of determination among the crew. They knew the risks, but they also knew the stakes. If they succeeded, they wouldn't just survive. They would redefine what it meant to fight against impossible odds. The stage was set for a confrontation unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. As the Resolute led the charge, Ilara's fleet became more than just a collection of ships. They became a symbol of defiance, a testament to humanity's unyielding spirit. And the Voron Alliance was about to learn the true cost of underestimating the tiny army. The climactic battle. The Voron Alliance's supply hub was a fortress in space, a massive structure surrounded by layers of defenses and patrolling warships. It sat at the heart of the Voron's logistical network, ensuring their fleets were well-fed and armed. To strike it was to sever the lifeline of the galaxy's most powerful military. But Captain Ilara didn't see a fortress. She saw an opportunity. From the bridge of the Resolute, Ilara stood before the holographic display of the hub, her eyes sharp as blades. The crew watched her in silence, waiting for her orders. Her voice, steady and unwavering, broke the tension. "They think this hub is untouchable," she said. "But they've made one fatal mistake. They've underestimated what we're willing to do." The crew leaned in, eager to hear her plan. Ilara's strategy was as bold as it was unconventional. She wasn't going to attack the hub directly. That would be suicide. Instead, she would make the Voron think the attack had already happened. The operation began with the deployment of the Spectres, the stealth drones that carried advanced AI systems. They slipped past the Voron's defenses unnoticed, infiltrating their communication relays and sensor arrays. Within hours, the drones had fabricated a massive fleet of false signals, phantom ships that appeared to be converging on the hub. On the Voron flagship, stationed near the hub, Admiral Kirex watched the tactical display with growing concern. "What is this?" he demanded, pointing at the holographic projection of the Phantom fleet. "Where did they come from?" "Admiral, our sensors show over 50 enemy ships closing in," his officer reported, his voice shaky. "We're outnumbered." Kirex's scales shimmered with unease. "Impossible. They don't have those numbers." But the evidence was undeniable. To the Voron systems, the Phantom fleet was real, its size and firepower overwhelming. Kirex had no choice but to act. "All ships to defensive positions. Prepare to intercept." As the Voron scrambled to meet the illusionary fleet, the Resolute and her small force moved into position. They had hidden in the debris field surrounding the hub, using the chaos to slip past the distracted patrols. Every move was calculated, every risk measured. "Captain," Merrick said, his voice low, "the Spectres are working. The Voron have deployed their entire fleet to intercept the Phantom signals." Ilara nodded. "Good. While they chase ghosts, we'll hit them where it hurts." The real attack began with precision strikes. Human ships targeted the hub's power stations and defensive turrets, crippling its ability to fight back. Drones swarmed the structure, disabling key systems and planting explosives in critical locations. The hub's defenses, designed to withstand a frontal assault, were utterly unprepared for the surgical precision of Ilara's tactics. Inside the hub, panic spread like wildfire. Vorin officers shouted conflicting orders, their systems overloaded by the Spectre's interference. By the time they realized the true attack was happening, it was too late. On the Vorin flagship, Kyrex seethed with rage. He watched helplessly as the supply hub burned, its structure collapsing under the relentless assault. "How are they doing this?" he roared. "Where is our fleet?" "They're still engaging the Phantom ships, Admiral," his officer replied. "We've been completely outmaneuvered." Kyrex slammed his fist onto the console, his pride shattered. He had underestimated the humans again, and it had cost him dearly. But even in his defeat, he refused to admit they were superior. "Order the fleet to return. We'll crush them here and now." But Ilara had anticipated this. As the Vorin fleet began to retreat, she activated the final phase of her plan. Hidden mines, planted by the Spectres during the initial infiltration, detonated across the battlefield, further crippling the Vorin's ability to regroup. "Captain, their reinforcements are delayed," Merrick reported. "The fleet's in disarray." Ilara's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then we press the advantage. Focus all fire on their command ships. Without leadership, they're nothing." The human fleet moved with deadly precision, targeting the Vorin's flagship and its escorts. Despite their smaller numbers, they exploited every weakness, turning the battle into a rout. The once mighty Vorin alliance, the terror of the galaxy, was now a scattered, broken force. As the dust settled, the Resolute and her fleet regrouped, the crew exhausted but victorious. The supply hub lay in ruins, its destruction a devastating blow to the Vorin war machine. For the first time, the galaxy saw that the invincible alliance could bleed. On the bridge, Ilara addressed her crew, her voice filled with quiet pride. "We've done the impossible. We've taken down their fortress and shown the galaxy that humanity will not be underestimated. But this is not the end. They'll come back, stronger and angrier. And when they do, we'll be ready." Her words were met with cheers, a rallying cry for a species that had been pushed to the brink and emerged stronger. The Vorin had underestimated humanity for the last time. The final stand. The destruction of the Vorin supply hub rippled across the galaxy like a seismic wave, shaking the foundation of the Alliance's power. For centuries, the Vorin Alliance had ruled with unchecked dominance. Now, for the first time, they faced a true existential threat, and it came from a species they had dismissed as insignificant. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Ilara reviewed the intelligence reports. The Vorin were gathering their forces for a final, decisive assault, a desperate bid to crush humanity once and for all. The galaxy watched in tense anticipation, wondering if the humans would survive, or if they would be extinguished under the Vorin's wrath. The Vorin flagship, the Imperium's Wrath, led a colossal fleet toward humanity's last stronghold, an unassuming asteroid base hidden in a dense nebula. This base, built in secret, was humanity's final bastion, housing not only their remaining fleet, but also the gravimetric core, a piece of technology the Vorin coveted above all else. Admiral Kyrex, his pride battered but his resolve hardened, stood at the helm of his flagship. His voice echoed through the fleet-wide comms. "This ends today. Humanity will either surrender their secrets or be wiped from existence." As the Vorin fleet approached, the asteroid base appeared vulnerable, its defenses seemingly inadequate to repel such an overwhelming force. But appearances were deceiving. Ilara had been preparing for this moment. Inside the base, Ilara gathered her senior officers for a final briefing. "We're outnumbered," she began, her tone matter-of-fact. "But we've been outnumbered before. What the Vorin don't understand is that their strength is also their weakness. They rely on brute force, on fear. We rely on something far more powerful: ingenuity." Her plan was daring, borderline reckless. Humanity's survival hinged on using the gravimetric core to its full potential, pushing it beyond its theoretical limits. If it worked, it would not just disrupt the Vorin fleet. It would redefine the nature of warfare. As the Vorin fleet closed in, Ilara's fleet emerged from the asteroid base, a patchwork of battered ships that seemed laughably small against the Vorin's armada. Admiral Kirex sneered at the sight, his confidence bolstered. "They're fools," he muttered. "End this now." The Vorin fleet unleashed a torrent of firepower, their weapons lighting up the nebula like a violent storm. But Ilara's fleet didn't engage directly. Instead, they used the gravimetric core to distort space itself, creating shifting fields of gravity that bent and twisted the Vorin's attacks. Beams of energy curved away harmlessly, and missiles spiraled into oblivion. The Vorin ships, unable to maintain formation, collided with one another as the gravity fields pulled and pushed them unpredictably. Chaos spread through their ranks, their massive fleet unraveling under the weight of its own size. On the Resolute, Ilara issued the next phase of her plan. Activate the Phantom Protocol. The gravimetric core unleashed its full power, creating dozens of holographic fleets that mimicked human ships with perfect precision. To the Vorin sensors, it appeared as though humanity had summoned reinforcements from nowhere. Panic swept through their ranks as they found themselves surrounded by an endless swarm of enemies. Admiral Kyrex's voice boomed across his flagship. "Focus fire. They can't all be real." But the Vorin were paralyzed by indecision. Every time they targeted a fleet, it vanished, only to reappear elsewhere. Meanwhile, Ilara's real ships darted through the chaos, targeting key vessels with surgical strikes. The battle reached its peak as the Imperium's Wrath unleashed its superweapon, a gravimetric disruptor capable of destabilizing entire fleets. The weapon's charge illuminated the battlefield, a harbinger of devastation. On the Resolute, Ilara's tactical officer, Merrick, reported grimly, "Captain, if that weapon fires, it'll destroy everything within range, including us." Ilara's expression hardened. "Then we stop it." Using the gravimetric core, Ilara directed the remaining drones to swarm the Imperium's Wrath. The drones, small and fast, dodged the flagship's defenses and targeted its disruptor. But the Vorin flagship's shields were too strong. Ilara made a fateful decision. "Prepare for a direct strike. We'll disable that weapon ourselves." The Resolute charged toward the Imperium's Wrath, evading a hailstorm of enemy fire. Ilara's crew worked with unflinching resolve, knowing the risk. As they closed in, Ilara gave the final order: divert all power to the gravimetric core. The Resolute unleashed a pulse of gravimetric energy, a concentrated blast that tore through the Vorin flagship's shields and struck the disruptor. The weapon overloaded, its energy imploding and sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The Imperium's Wrath shuddered violently, its systems failing. On the bridge, Kyrex stumbled, his confidence crumbling. How are they doing this?" he whispered, his voice hollow. The Vorin fleet, leaderless and disoriented, began to scatter. The once unstoppable armada was now a broken shadow of its former self. Ilara watched from the bridge of the Resolute, her crew erupting in cheers. But her focus remained on the bigger picture. "Let them retreat," she said. "They'll carry the story of this day back to the galaxy. Humanity is no longer prey. We are equals, or better." The battle marked a turning point in galactic history. The Vorin alliance, humbled and weakened, could no longer claim dominance. The galaxy, once unified in its mockery of humanity, now viewed them with a mix of awe and fear. As Ilara stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, gazing at the distant stars, she felt the weight of what they had accomplished. Humanity had faced extinction and risen stronger. They had not just survived, they had thrived. Her final words to her crew echoed in the silent vastness of space. "We were the tiny army, but now we're the giants they will never forget."